Brother-in-law grabbed the microphone at my sister's baby shower in front of 63 people and announced that I owed him my condo. He smiled when he said it. My sister was sitting right there, 31 weeks pregnant, holding a cup of sparkling cider, and she smiled too. What neither of them saw was the woman sitting in the third row, my former real estate attorney, who had helped me close on that property 4 years ago and knew every single line of that deed. She set down her petit four very slowly. That was the moment everything changed. But let me back up, because this story didn't start at a baby shower. It started the way most disasters do. Quietly and with someone you loved. My name is Serena. I'm 32 years old and I'm a licensed structural engineer for a mid-sized firm in Denver. I specialize in commercial retrofits, taking old buildings and making them safe enough to last another century. I am not flashy about what I do. I drive a sensible car. I meal prep on Sundays. I have one luxury in my life, and it is the condo I bought in the LoHi neighborhood 4 years ago after 6 years of grinding, saving, and eating rice and beans 3 nights a week. It's a 2-bedroom on the 4th floor, with a view of the city and a rooftop terrace that, on clear nights, gives you a slice of the Rockies. It is worth, as of last year's appraisal, just under $900,000. It is also, as of last Tuesday, the subject of a police report. My sister Adrienne is 3 years younger than me. We grew up close, the way sisters do when there's no one else in a small apartment to talk to. And our bond survived a lot. It survived our parents' divorce when I was 14. It survived Adrienne dropping out of community college twice. It survived the phase where she wanted to be an essential oils distributor, the phase where she wanted to flip houses with no money down, and the phase where she got really into something called abundance mindset coaching, for which she paid $30,000 of money she didn't have. I paid off that credit card balance quietly without making it a thing because she was my sister and because I thought I was helping. Then she met Colt. I want to be precise about Colt, because he matters. He came into Adrienne's life about 2 years ago, introduced at a mutual friend's barbecue. He was handsome in an obvious way, the kind of handsome that's used to doing work for him. He sold solar panels on commission, or he did at the time. His employment history turned out to be more complicated than advertised. He called me Cease the first time we met. He said it with this easy grin, like we'd known each other for years, like we were already family, like my approval was a foregone conclusion. It made my skin prickle, but Adrienne looked so happy that I smiled back and handed him a beer. Over the following year, the questions started. They were small at first. Colt wondering out loud at Thanksgiving what the HOA situation was like in LoHi. Colt asking at Christmas if I'd ever thought about renting my place out and letting the asset work for me. Adrienne laughing and saying, "She's an engineer, Colt. She's already figured that out." But Colt never laughed along. He nodded slowly, like he was calculating something. When Adrienne got pregnant, things accelerated. It wasn't the pregnancy itself. I was genuinely happy for her. Over the moon, actually. The kind of happy that comes with crying in your car on the way home because you love your sister and this was real and good. What changed was what Colt decided the pregnancy meant. It meant he was owed things. It meant the world owed him a better starting position. And somehow in the architecture of his mind, I was the world. The first direct ask came 6 months into the pregnancy. They came to my condo for dinner on a Friday, Adrienne glowing and tired in the way of late second trimester. Colt freshly barbered and wearing a blazer he did not usually wear. I made pasta. He waited until I poured wine, sparkling juice for Adrienne, and then he leaned forward with his elbows on my dining table and said, "Serena, we've been talking. With the baby coming, we need stability. Real stability. And we think the best thing, for the baby, for the family, is if you transferred the condo to us." I thought I'd misheard him. I set my fork down. "I'm sorry." "Hear me out," he said, holding up one hand. "You make good money, you can rent anywhere. You can get a nicer place even. But this condo, the location, the school district, the equity, for a family starting out, it's everything. It's what we need to give this baby the right foundation." I looked at Adrienne. She was looking at her plate. "Adrienne, I said. She looked up. Her expression was not apologetic. It was the expression of someone who has been coached. It makes sense, Serena. You're single. You don't need this much space. And the baby? This is my home, I said. I bought it. I have a mortgage on it. I pay it every month. We could take over the mortgage, Colt said immediately. Like he'd rehearsed it. You make $42,000 a year on a good year, I said. The mortgage payment is $3,400 a month, before HOA. His jaw tightened. That's a judgment. That's math, I said. The answer is no. There was a silence. Adrian reached over and put her hand on Colt's arm, not to comfort me, to steady him. They left early that night. I did the dishes alone and stood at my kitchen window looking out at the Denver skyline and tried to tell myself it was a one-time thing, a stress response. The anxiety of new parenthood making people say strange things. I almost convinced myself. 2 weeks later, Adrian called. She said Colt hadn't meant it to come out so bluntly. She said they loved me. She said they just wanted to talk about options. She said, and I remember this exact phrasing, "You've always been the one with the safety net, Serena. You've always been the one who lands on her feet. We just need you to share the net a little." I said I understood, and I said I loved her, and I said the condo wasn't an option, and I thought that was the end of it. It was not the end of it. The baby shower was Adrian's idea, but the guest list was Colt's. I didn't know that until later. It was held at a garden event space in Wash Park, rented, I later learned, on a credit card that was already at 90% capacity. 63 people. Catered. A flower wall. A bump-to-baby photo station. It was beautiful, and it was financially reckless, and it was very much on brand. I arrived with a gift I'd spent 2 weeks sourcing, a handmade quilt from a woman in Colorado Springs who embroidered each one to order, and a fully stocked emergency kit for new parents. Everything from the specific saline drops 2 pediatricians had recommended to me to a sound machine that I'd researched for 4 hours. I was, in other words, trying. I was sitting at the table closest to the garden wall, next to my aunt and 2 of Adrian's college friends. The shower was going well, the games were silly and warm. Adrian was radiant. I was eating a small square of lemon cake and genuinely feeling something close to uncomplicated joy. That's when Colt stood up. He didn't have a role in a baby shower. He had not been invited to speak. He picked up the wireless microphone from the DJ table like it belonged to him, clinked a fork against his champagne flute, and waited for the room to quiet. People assumed it was a toast. The room gave him the silence he wanted. "I just want to take a second," he said, his voice warm and amplified, "to talk about family. Because that's what today is about. That's what all of this is about." He gestured around the room. People smiled. My aunt put her hand over mine. I felt something cold beginning to move up my spine. "Adrian and I have been doing a lot of thinking," he continued, "about what it means to give our daughter the best possible start. And we've had some really meaningful conversations with Serena." He found me in the crowd, held my gaze for exactly 1 second too long, about how our family can come together in a real, tangible way, about how the people in this room who have been blessed with success can make a choice to lift up the people they love. The room was still smiling. I had stopped. "Serena has a beautiful home," Colt said. "A home that's the right size for a family, the right neighborhood, the right schools." And she has generously agreed. I was on my feet before the sentence finished. "She has not," I said. My voice came out steady, which surprised me, because my whole body was vibrating. "I have not agreed to anything." The room shifted the way rooms do when something real happens inside them. A collective intake, a freeze. Colt smiled. It was a practiced smile, the kind designed to make the other person look unhinged. "Serena, this isn't the place. You made it the place," I said. "You picked up a microphone in a room full of people and told them I agreed to give you my home. I didn't agree to that. I will never agree to that. And everyone here deserves to know that what you just said is a lie." Adrian stood up. "Serena, please. I love you," I told her. "I love you and I love your daughter, and I am leaving right now. But I am not giving you my condo, and you—" I looked at Colt, Do not get to stand in a rented garden with a wireless microphone and tell 60 people that I made a promise I didn't make. That's when I heard the chair. It was the specific sound of someone pushing back deliberately, not scrambling, not surprised, but intentional. A woman in the third row stood up. She was in her mid-50s, silver-streaked hair, a blazer, reading glasses pushed up on her head. Her name was Patricia Okafor. She had been my real estate attorney when I closed on the condo, and she had since become a partner at her firm. She had been invited, I later learned, because she was old friends with Adrian's godmother, and because the world is both very large and very small. Patricia looked at Colt the way I imagine she looks at contracts that have been deliberately misdrafted. "I'm sorry," she said, in a voice that carried without needing to be loud. "I need to ask a clarifying question. Are you claiming that Serena has made a verbal or written agreement to transfer her property to you?" Colt blinked. He did not know who she was. "This is a family matter." "I'm aware," Patricia said. "I'm also Serena's attorney of record for that property. So I'd like to know what agreement you're referencing because I am not aware of one, and any transfer of real property in Colorado requires written documentation, notarization, and my signature. So if such an agreement exists, I'd very much like to see it." The silence in the garden was total. Colt's smile didn't disappear all at once. It collapsed, section by section, like a wall being taken apart from the top down. We've had conversations," he said. "Conversations are not contracts," Patricia said. She picked up her handbag. "Serena, I'd like to speak with you outside." She looked at Colt one more time. "And I'd strongly advise you to stop speaking." I followed Patricia out through the garden gate into the parking lot. The afternoon sun was bright and stupid, totally indifferent to what had just happened. She turned to me and said, "Are you all right?" "I'm not sure," I said honestly. "What exactly has been going on?" she asked. I told her everything. The dinner, the phone calls, the escalating pressure, Adrian's line about the safety net, the way Colt had been building a narrative slowly and persistently that my home was a family resource and not my personal property. Patricia listened without interrupting, which is something she is very good at. When I finished, she said, "He just attempted to publicly establish a claim on your property using a false premise. That's not nothing, legally. Depending on how far he intends to take this, it could be the groundwork for a fraudulent transfer scheme." "Have you received anything in writing? Texts? Emails?" I had all of it, every text, every email, every voicemail I'd saved because something in my gut had told me to. "Send everything to me tonight," Patricia said. "All of it. And from now on, you don't communicate with either of them without running it by me first. Do you understand?" I understood. She squeezed my hand once, then said in the tone of someone who closes hard deals before lunch, "Go home. Lock your door. Make tea. This isn't over tonight, but you handled yourself well in there." I drove home. I made the tea. I did not cry until I was sitting on my rooftop terrace with the city spread out below me and the mountains going pink in the distance. And then I cried for a long time, not because of Colt, but because of Adrian. Because I knew with the particular knowing of sisters that she had not stumbled into this. She had agreed to it. She had sat across from me at my own dining table and let this happen. And I didn't know yet if she had become someone I didn't recognize, or if I had simply never looked closely enough. My phone, when I picked it back up, was full. 41 texts from various people who had been at the shower, a voicemail from my aunt that was mostly just her saying my name and baby and "Are you okay?" 14 missed calls from Adrian. And then, 20 minutes after the missed calls, a single text from Colt. "You embarrassed my wife in front of her family and friends on the most important day of her pregnancy. You will regret this." I screenshot it. I sent it to Patricia with the note. "This just came in. Add it to the file." Patricia replied at 11:45 p.m., already in the file. "Get some sleep." It came to my building the next morning. I know this because my building has a doorbell camera that sends clips to my phone, And at 8:52 a.m., I received a 30-second video of Colt buzzing my unit repeatedly while Adrian stood slightly behind him, her hand on her belly, her face unreadable. I did not go downstairs. I texted Patricia. She called me immediately. "Don't engage," she said. "Under any circumstances, let them leave." My sister is 31 weeks pregnant standing outside my building. There was a pause. "I understand that," Patricia said, and her voice was gentler than I expected. "But if you go down there, Colt will turn whatever you say into ammunition. He's already building something. Don't hand him bricks." I watched the camera feed. Eventually they left. Adrian looked back at my building as they walked away. I don't know what she was looking for. That same afternoon, Patricia had her investigator pull Colt's financial records and public legal history. She called me that evening and the call took 45 minutes. Colt had not been selling solar panels for 8 months. He'd been consulting, a word that in his case meant he had no income he could verify. He had $67,000 in personal debt across 4 credit cards. He had a judgment against him from a landlord in Arizona for unpaid rent and property damage totaling $19,000. This was before he moved to Denver, before he met Adrian, and he had never disclosed it to her. He had been sued in small claims twice, once by a former business partner over money never repaid and once by someone who appeared to be, based on the filing details, an ex-girlfriend he borrowed $8,000 from. Both settled. Both sealed. He had bound Adrian the same way a person with no money finds someone standing next to a warm fire. He had moved close and stayed close and slowly rearranged the furniture of her life until everything pointed toward me. My heart did something complicated when Patricia read me the full picture. Not for Colt. For my sister. She was 31 weeks pregnant with a man who had, in all likelihood, looked at her the same way he looked at my City View condo. As a resource. As a step. And she had let herself believe that his ambition for my things was love. That weekend I drove to my parents' house, my mother's house now, in Aurora, and told her everything. My mother is 61 years old, and she worked the front desk at a medical office for 23 years, and she has a clarity of judgment that I have always admired and occasionally feared. She listened to the whole story over coffee at her kitchen table. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Your grandfather worked 14-hour days to give me a house. Nobody handed it to him. Nobody talked into a microphone and said he should give it to the next person who wanted it." She looked at me. "You hold on to your home, Serena. Whatever it costs you, you hold on." I told her about what Patricia had found. My mother closed her eyes. When she opened them, she said, "Adrian needs to know." "I know," I said. "She's not going to want to hear it." "I know." "Do it anyway," she said. "She's going to be a mother in 2 months. She needs to know who she's building a life with. You're not doing her any favors by protecting her from the truth." I arranged a meeting at a neutral location, a coffee shop in Capitol Hill that I picked because it had good parking, clear sight lines, and was the kind of place where people didn't make scenes. I told Adrian to come alone. She showed up with Colt. I had brought Patricia's summary. I had printed it. I slid it across the table to my sister and said, "I need you to read this before anyone says anything else." Colt reached for it. I put my hand on it first. "It's for Adrian." He sat back. His jaw was doing the thing it did. Adrian read slowly. I watched her face. I watched the moment the Arizona judgment registered. A small tightening around her eyes. I watched the moment she read the ex-girlfriend's name in the small claims filing, a longer stillness. I watched her get to the end, close the pages, and set them very carefully down on the table. "Colt," she said, her voice awed and flat. "The Arizona thing. You told me that landlord was a scammer. You told me the lawsuit was fake." "It was," he said immediately. "That guy was out to get me for months before I even—" "The girl," Adrian said. $8,000. You told me she was obsessed with you. You told me she made that up. She did. Adrian, your sister is trying to—" "Stop," Adrian said. He stopped. Adrian said. He stopped. There was a silence at that table that I think all three of us will carry for a very long time. Did you plan the baby shower thing? Adrian asked him. She was not looking at him the way you look at someone you believe. She was looking at him the way I look at a load-bearing calculation that doesn't add up. The microphone, did you plan it? I planned a toast to our family. Did you tell people I agreed to give you my condo? I asked. The answer was in his face before his mouth opened. Adrian pushed back her chair. She was 31 weeks pregnant and moving with the particular careful deliberateness of someone who's holding themselves together through sheer will. I need you to leave, she said to Colt. Adrian, I need you to go outside and wait by the car, she said. I am going to talk to my sister. Alone. He looked at me like this was my doing, and then he picked up his jacket and walked out. Adrian and I sat across from each other in a Capitol Hill coffee shop on a Tuesday morning. She looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with pregnancy. Like she'd been carrying something heavy for a long time and had only just been told what it was. I didn't know about Arizona, she said. I know, I knew he had debt. I knew things were tight. But I thought... She stopped. I thought we were a team. I know. Did he actually think you were going to give us your condo? I think he thought he could build enough pressure until it felt easier to give it to him than to keep saying no, I said. I think that's how he operates. She put her hands flat on the table, over the printed pages of Patricia's summary. Her eyes were dry. My sister has always cried hard or not at all. No middle register. She was not crying. I'm so sorry, Serena, she said. You don't have to. I do, she said. I let him make you the problem because it was easier than seeing the problem clearly. She looked out the window. I have a daughter coming in 2 months. I know, I said. I don't know what I'm going to do. You don't have to know that today, I said. I slid my hand across the table and covered hers. But I do need you to know that I love you and I love that baby and none of what's happening is about you and me, okay? She nodded. She held on to my hand. We sat like that for a while. The legal proceedings were not dramatic, not in the cinematic sense. They were paperwork and waiting and the grinding, methodical work of establishing a record. Patricia filed for a formal cease and desist on behalf of Aria Holdings. I'd put the condo in an LLC 4 years ago on Patricia's own advice, which meant any transfer would have required corporate documentation and a vote of officers, which was just me, which meant Colt had been publicly asserting a claim on a corporate asset without any legal basis whatsoever. The cease and desist also addressed the text message, the "You will regret this," as a potential harassment and intimidation document. Colt, served with the cease and desist, hired a lawyer. The lawyer apparently reviewed the situation and had a very frank conversation with his new client, because 2 weeks later, through counsel, Colt sent a formal written statement acknowledging that no agreement to transfer property had existed and withdrawing any claim to the condo. He also separately moved out of the apartment he shared with Adrian. I don't know exactly what happened in those 2 weeks, and Adrian is still telling me in pieces. What I know is that the financial picture Patricia had uncovered was worse than the summary, and that Adrian, once she began looking with clear eyes, found several more things she hadn't known. I am not going to detail them here, because they are not my story to tell. They are hers. What I will tell you is that on a Saturday morning, 3 weeks after the baby shower, I drove to Adrian's apartment with a box of groceries and my old slow cooker. She was sitting on her couch in an oversized sweatshirt, the apartment half-packed with Colt's things waiting to be picked up. She looked tired and sad and more like herself than she had in over a year. We made soup. We watched a home renovation show that we'd watched together as teenagers. She fell asleep on the couch at 9 p.m., and I covered her with a blanket and did her dishes and drove home. The court date, if you could call it that, it was technically a hearing regarding the cease and desist compliance and the harassment documentation, was 3 weeks after that. I wore the same blazer I wear to client presentations. Patricia sat beside me. Colt sat on the other side of the room with his lawyer, in a suit that looked too new, like he bought it specifically for this. The matter was resolved in 40 minutes. Colt's written retraction was entered into the record, the harassment documentation, the texts, the escalating communications, the baby shower incident which Patricia had reconstructed from sworn statements by 4 attendees including Adrian's godmother, was accepted as part of the record. No criminal charges were filed because I chose not to pursue them. But the public record of the hearing is permanent and searchable. When we walked out of the courthouse into a Denver afternoon that had that specific cold clarity of early November, Patricia turned to me and said, "Done," I said. We shook hands. Then she hugged me briefly, which was not something I expected, and said, "You built well. The LLCs saved you a lot of trouble. Remember that next time someone calls it paranoid." My mother came to my condo that Sunday. I made her coffee on my good machine and we sat on the rooftop terrace with blankets over our legs. She looked at the city for a long time. "Your grandfather," she said finally, "would have liked this view." "I know," I said. My niece was born 6 weeks later. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with Adrian's nose and a full head of dark hair that made the nurses laugh. Adrian named her Cecily. I was in the waiting room when she was born and Adrian called me in first, before anyone else, and I stood next to the bed and held the small, warm person and felt something shift in my chest that I do not have the engineering vocabulary to describe. Adrian is figuring things out. She is not in a good place financially, and she is doing the work of rebuilding, one methodical step at a time. I help where I can, in the ways I can, with the boundaries that are now clearly drawn and understood by both of us. It is not simple, it is not uncomplicated, but it is real and it is ours. Colt is, as far as I know, back in Arizona. I'm on my roof right now, actually. It's early evening, the kind of blue hour light that makes Denver look like a painting. Cecily has her first pediatrician appointment tomorrow, and Adrienne texted me the time so I can come. My laptop is open next to me with a structural analysis I need to finish by morning. I'm not finished with it. But the mountains are doing something extraordinary right now, going from pink to purple to a deep and settling gray. And the city below is lighting up, window by window. I'll finish the work. The structure is sound. And I'm not going anywhere. There's a moment I keep coming back to. Not the baby shower, not the courthouse, not even the night I sat on my rooftop and cried until I ran out of reasons to keep going. The moment I keep coming back to is much smaller than any of those. It's me at 24 years old, eating rice and beans at a folding table in a studio apartment, transferring $40 into savings and telling myself it would matter someday. That $40. That Tuesday night. That choice nobody saw. I think about that a lot now, because what happened with Colt wasn't really about a condo. It was about what he saw when he looked at my life. A finished product handed to him by the universe, available for redistribution. He didn't see the folding table. He didn't see the years. He saw the 4th floor and the mountain view and a number on an appraisal report. And he decided that effort was something other people did, and entitlement was something he'd earned just by showing up. That's the thing about people who want what you built without doing what you did to build it. They've convinced themselves the gap between you and them is luck, or unfairness, or selfishness on your part. It's easier than the truth. The truth is that integrity is boring and slow and not photogenic. It doesn't make a good toast at a baby shower. It's just you choosing the right thing over and over in rooms where nobody's watching. For years, until one day it turns into something real. And when someone tries to take that real thing from you, your job is to be smarter than your anger. I wanted to scream at that baby shower. I wanted to lose it in a way that would have felt good for about 30 seconds and handed Colt exactly what he needed, a version of me that looked unstable, emotional, easy to dismiss. Instead, I stood up and said the truth plainly, and I let Patricia do the rest. That wasn't weakness. That was the hardest kind of discipline. Knowing when your best move is to put down the shovel and let someone else dig the hole for themselves. I won't pretend I handled everything perfectly. I should have drawn clearer lines with Adrian earlier. I let the loyalty I felt for my sister blur into a kind of willful blindness about the life she was building. Loving someone doesn't mean watching them walk into something dangerous without saying a word. Sometimes the most honest thing you can do for the people you love is show them what they don't want to see, even when it costs you something. My niece Cecily is going to grow up and face her own version of this. Somebody will try to take something from her, her time, her credit, her work, her confidence. I hope by the time she's old enough to understand, she'll have a mother who modeled what it looks like to rebuild after a hard thing, and an aunt who showed her what it looks like to hold the line. The foundation held, not because I was lucky, because I built it right and then I protected it, and then I got back to work. That's all it ever was. And it was enough.